I'm honestly shocked that it took the band this long to put out their next album. You know, most of the time we have 2 or 3 albums within the span of, you know, the time that we had from their last album, but better late than never, I suppose. So let's dive into it. Flight B741 from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. So, King Giz, the Giz, I've covered them much times here on this channel, mainly because they're extremely prolific. This is their 26th studio record from the Australian garage psych band that got their start in 2010. So within around 14 years, we have 26 records, which is more than I think a lot of bands with twice and sometimes even 3 times their amount of time on this earth have. These guys are extremely prolific and they cover like a multiple of different genres. You know, like the first handful of records were very garage rock from the Australian landscape and the Australian scene. But I feel like once they got to a point, you know, they decided we don't want to be a one-act pony. You know, we're constantly putting out music, we're constantly doing something, and we want to capture that feeling and we want to keep it going. So like every album is almost a direct response to the one that came before in genre bending and trying different techniques. And yeah, so we've got everything from like power metal to progressive rock to psychedelic rock to folk rock to ambient sound rock. And I feel as if like if there's a rock subgenre, these guys have dabbled in it. And I feel like we're drawing a little bit from the same wells as, you know, the last handful of records have kind of been genres that they're playing with, but I feel like they're perfecting. Like the Draco Apocalypse Doomsday record was a improvement and almost a perfection of their Infest the Rat's Nest. Here we have a little bit of a perfection of stuff that we were getting from their 2019 or 2018 record, Fishing for Fishies. And the two are very similar in approaches. You know, they're both very like classic rock from like the late 60s, early 70s, you know, kind of the southern rock that we would get from bands like CCR or like a little bit of Leonard Skinner, but that has the forefront of this fun rock. You know, it's got a little bit of a folk flair to it, but at the end of the day, it's recognizable rock music. And I kind of like that. You know, I feel like these guys aren't necessarily just reinventing the wheel, or they're, you know, taking homages from the past masters and kind of doing a cut and paste as some of the contemporaries that are kind of out doing this rock, throwback rock music kind of has. They're doing something new and something like fun about it. So kind of where Fishing for Fishies left off in being this kind of groove rock, jam rock kind of a flavor. The thing that I really want to shout out, though, is how collaborative this record is. And that works both in favor and a little bit, like one of my only criticisms about this record, against it. Because I wouldn't necessarily say that this sounds disjointed, but I will say that it doesn't have kind of that very strong, unique voice that I feel like a lot of their records did in the past. But I will say what saves this record from that being a complete negative rather than just kind of a little bit of a bugaboo is that the concept, the theming, and the box that they're playing in is so well constructed and so well padded that playing so close to home on this one doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. Now, most of the time within, you know, the King Giz discography, they're usually trading off singing styles to a lot of the different band members. You know, the lead, kind of the lead, but not really, of Stu McKenzie is taking a little bit of a back seat on this record. He is still the prominent singer on the first track of Mirage City, as well as Hog Calling, as well as Daily Blues, but everybody else gets a moment to shine on here in terms of the vocal works. And I think going into this album, they were like, this is going to be a collaborative album first, with all of us taking a little bit of, you know, a crack at the microphone. You know, we're all going to take a little bit of our own ideas and put it here into the pot. And they were very good at structuring this album to have a singular focal point, but everybody coming at it from just a slightly different view. I think this album might have even worked a little bit more if everybody had a little bit more of a distinct singing style as well. Because unfortunately, I will say, like Ambrose Kenny Smith, Michael Canavan, Joey Walker, Cook, Craig, they don't really have too much of a very distinguishing singing voice to Stu's. Like, Stu kind of led the template and everybody's kind of playing within his own sandbox in that sense. So like first or second time listeners of this album and this band might even not recognize that, hey, there's more than one person taking the stab at the singing. But here we are. Now, a lot of the standard King Giz feels are here, but once again, we're getting them into this kind of like smooth rock, jam rock kind of a flavor. And man, I just love the harmonica. You know, Ambrose Kenny Smith I love his harmonica. I love the distortion sound on it. And I gotta praise this album for the production side. You know, the production on this album is top notch. I love that I can hear every little detail and every minutia of this record. Honestly, I think another thing, and we'll get into the actual music about here, is that this album is a bop. And it's a celebratory of music kind of a bop. Like, this is a feel-good record. And I feel like I love the fact that we're getting more of that nowadays. Like, we're getting a lot more of the feel-good vibes on here, and I'm loving that. I almost wish that this album was released at the end of June rather than mid-August, so that I would have this for the 3 months that kind of really have that really, like, hot, dirgy summer vibe, so I can at least have a little bit of a fun times with this kind of a music. I will say there are a couple moments on this album that do take me out because of the little bit of the callbacks, specifically on my favorite track, which is kind of funny, Field of Vision. Field of Vision feels both like Space Truckin' from Deep Purple, especially within the verses of this track, but within the chorus work, it feels like Son of a Bitch, and I want to say it was from AC/DC, but it probably isn't. It was probably an AC/DC imitator, but it's like, now you're messing with a son of bitch, you know, that track. I feel like the verses are very similar to that, and I wish that they had kind of put a little bit of a flair on that, and it might just be, you know, it might just be one of those moments where two completely separate things just happen to come out of the environment separately that happen to be very, very similar. That could be it. But I also know that their reach of influences do encompass both AC/DC and their knockoffs, as well as Deep Purple. So, but it's the ending of this track that I absolutely love. And I think that is the perfect example of why I love this record, is because it never takes itself too seriously, even though we're dealing with some really heavy subject matter. Like, I mean, throughout the track, it's like, is there a God? Is there a reason to be when there's no higher power? How do we make ourselves meaningful in a meaningful world? And then at the end of the track, it's just like, I'm gonna be a silly. I'm silly Billy. I'm gonna be a silly Billy. And I'm just like, that is a philosophy that I subscribe to. And I absolutely love that. And I feel as if, like, there's callbacks to other, you know, albums on here, like Rats in the Sky could be a callback to the Infest's The Rat's Nest. And Sad Pilot has homages to, you know, past works as well. I think from start to finish, this is a stellar record from King Giz. I don't think that this is like a redefining record from them. And I don't think that this was supposed to be. I think this was supposed to be a good time made by a band that was having a good time. And at that point, I can't fault this record. It's, you know, not earth-shattering. It's not groundbreaking. You know, it's not like the next Nonagon Infinity or Polygon Wonderland. But I would also say, like this isn't necessarily even close to being some of their worst music. You know, it's not the KGLW kind of, or the Microtono stuff that I'm not a big fan of. This is kind of like north of middle of the road. You know, this is good music, fun times, but I wouldn't necessarily like run out to listen to it. You know, I'm not going to knock on people's doors and say, you got to check this one out. I think this is a good introduction to the band if you haven't even given the King Giz a try. I think this is a great starting point. You know, it's not throwing you right into the deep end like Polygon Wonderland, but it's also not like a bad representation of the band. Like, you're not getting the Dracula Apocalypse that's very thrash metal. You're not getting the Silver Chord that's very electronic rock. You know, it's a good foundation for the band, for which they can build the rest of their music on. And it was one that I absolutely love. So it's for that reason that I will say Flight B741 by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard is one that I would absolutely pick up in physical format. This is a great record. It's a great record, and being that this is their 26th studio record, and I'm still hearing fresh ideas, I'm still hearing, you know, a band that is having a lot of fun playing with one another, and everybody is good to take the lead. It's an absolute pleasure, and it's an absolute banger. So yeah, this one gets the note seal of approval. Go and check this one out. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. And that's what I've got for flight B741 from King Giz. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. Because that's all I got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.